Thank you everyone for joining us on the last day of Money 2020. I hope everybody has had a great conference thus far. Today we're going to talk about how to craft customer-first narratives in finance, because at the end of the day, if customers don't understand or they don't care about your products, your messages don't really matter. So to get started today, we are going to set the context. I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce yourselves and give us a quick overview of the mindset you bring to translating technical innovation into customer narratives. So Mike, I'll start with you.
Thanks. So I'm Mike Marinello. I am head of global communications for JPMorgan Payments, and most of you know JPMorgan, but if you don't know JPMorgan Payments, we're basically a 30,000 person, $18 billion a year fintech in the payment space. And so we operate within the bank, obviously, and as part of the bank, but we also operate a little bit more as a fintech would. And so that's our little differentiator. When you talk about crafting a narrative, we always start from a place of assume nobody cares what you have to say. I think the big mistake too many organizations make, too many executives make, and too many individuals make is that thinking that when you go into a room or you go pitch a reporter, that they actually care what you have to say. And if you start from a place where you have to make them care versus assuming they care, that changes everything, because the dynamic now is that you're proving to them why they should pay attention and listen versus assuming that they should pay attention and listen. And I think that's where we start from, and I think that's core to everything we do.
Great. Zack.
Hi. So similar to Michael, on just like for me, I think the North Star is definitely around education and entertainment. Zack, actually head of brand partnerships at Cash App. For those of you who don't know, Cash App, a financial platform that's really trying to make it accessible for all. And so part of that accessibility is relatability and humanizing of some kind of complex topics and making it easy and digestible for our consumers is really the goal, which we do through our partnerships.
That's great. And Amanda?
Great, thank you. Good morning. So I'm at the Clearinghouse. I'm Amanda Stewart. I head up all the marketing and communications, and we are the clearing and settlement company in the U.S. So we run chips, the Wares product, instant payments, the RTP network, ACH, and check. And so our mindset as we approach many of our storylines and product development is really what is the problem that we're solving for the industry, and that's the basis from which we work. We serve all financial institutions in the country, 9,000, and then we work also to help them solve problems for their end customers, their businesses and consumers.
That's great. So I'm Abby Trexler. I work at fVested, which is a financial marcoms agency, and we work across the broad spectrum of B2B and B2C, and we have representatives of B2B, B2C, and B2B2C on the panel today, so it's going to be a great conversation. Up next, Amanda, tell us, how do you actually operationalize these really complex narratives that you're trying to boil down for your B2B audiences?
Yeah, so for us, it's really about taking messages and making sure that they resonate in a simple way with our clients. So as I talked about the financial institutions that we serve, if we think about who they're trying to serve, it's consumers and businesses. And so if you think about consumers for a minute, it's, we've got our instant payments for nurses, and what is the problem for them? Maybe a nurse needs to be paid more quickly, maybe an Uber driver needs to get paid quickly and cash out with instant payments. And so it's really taking payment immediacy and making sure that those stories are told through that. And so we do a lot of use cases first, because the RTP network, for instance, is a newer product, about 8 years old. And so it takes some time to explain how that works. So part of our role as infrastructure in the ecosystem is really educating the market. And then also we do a lot of case studies where we highlight success stories from our clients and then embed our brand in those stories so that they too can share how others have benefited from the network. And then additionally, because we're trying to educate the entire payment ecosystem, we capture a lot in campaigns. Like every Friday, you'll see that we have weekend reads that talk about industry news, not just about us, but anything that's happening in the payment space. And then we also feature a lot of our clients through conferences and events like this.
That's great. Zack?
Similar to Amanda, just the storytelling is our and we find the best way to do that is to really go through our partners and let them be the voice. So we have various types of partnerships that are more like Formula One, for example, in partnership with Visa. Where we also, like we just, for example, had our Austin Grand Prix last weekend, and so it's a multifaceted of us speaking to the F1 fan base, to us doing and bringing our fans into that experience we launched a livery that was inspired by our debit card in partnership with Shabuzi, and there was content and curriculum around also just our programming that just made it more, again, like humanizing and fun, to then doing more true like financial education type work with for example, Kendrick Lamar and Ray Dalio, and breaking down complex topics as well. So I think that for me, there's no shortage of content that can be produced, and you really want to try and make stuff that anyone can relate to, and not just have one thing expected to fit for all.
That's great. And Mike, obviously, JPMorgan Payments, massive, it's very complex. How do you operationalize and put that customer first lens on your narratives?
Well, one of our ethos is we show, don't tell, right? And even here on the conference floor, we have a demonstration of how our biometrics would work in a small business environment. And it's right over there. It's the JPMorgan Pressery, and that's sort of an example of what we do, right? I think when you walk in with the name JPMorgan, it comes with a halo, but when you try and explain to them that you're also a technology provider and deliverer, there's a little bit of skepticism. So whether it's our biometrics, whether it's our blockchain solutions, whether it's anything we're doing with our partners, we show them instead of just telling them, and we also show up with our clients. So we have an ethos on whether it's a press release or a story. We don't just announce something. We announce it when it's in market and someone is actually using it, because that helps bring to life and make it real. And that's sort of a hill we have to climb, because people are a little skeptical if you don't know us in the payment space, but if in the SMB space or in the fintech space, like, what's JPMorgan doing here selling me a biometric device, right? Well, let us show you why and how. And so for us, if we show and tell, it helps us with credibility. And then I think you get, I know I work for a bank, but you get more bang for your buck, right? When you do that, right? Because it's higher quality.
Absolutely. So all three of you actually mentioned partnerships in your last reply. So tell us, let's dig in a little bit more on the partnerships. They're obviously super important. How does it play into the storytelling strategy? And Zack, I'm going to start with you on this one. I thought the Timothy Chalamet example was a good one. Maybe dig into that.
Yeah. So again, I mean, the goal for us is accessibility and inclusive network, and so we want to have so many various voices, and we should all be able to go to Cash App social channels or to our public web or anywhere and identify someone that you resonate with and you feel like you can understand or want to learn more and be inspired, be motivated by them. So one of my favorite phrases is horses for courses. Like, we should have a lot of various ways that you can come through our ecosystem. And so Timothy Chalamet is the recent face and running our recent brand campaign that is reaching lots of various audiences. But so is many of our other partners. We have Sabrina Carpenter. Currently, right now, we're doing a pop-up with her in New York during her shows, and we have this sort of Sabrina's pop-up with thrifting and trying to help younger audiences, not just buying net new things, but also understanding the money and how they can upcycle. And it's just, again, I can't stress enough the importance for us with partnerships. It's why I love what I get to do every day, is that we get to find really unique voices, work with them, and build out various types of marketing campaigns. It also is important, just I think we want to play well in the sandbox with others in the space. Visa is an incredibly important partner. They with our debit card. And so we also look at not just what our goals are, but what our other partners' goals are too. And if we can work together to really build that out. And so it's been amazing that Visa has been investing more in music, and we've been able to come in and really own pre-sales in a way that is just really interesting. And so I think I cannot stress enough just how important partnerships are from the consumer angle, from the brand, from the product angle, and bringing those all together, I think is where I just enjoy what we're doing today.
That's great. And Mike, what about you with partnerships? You actually had a big partnership last night.
Yes. Yes. So we look at it in two different ways, right? So we look at partnerships from a convening perspective. So how can we work with partners that help us bring people together? So last night we had an event with Axios, but it wasn't just about us. We brought in MasterCard, we brought in Colo, we had different journalists because we want to bring people in and be able to share knowledge and be not just aware of us, but some of the issues that are facing the industry. Because our approach from a media perspective is that the more people know about what's happening in the industry, whether they know it about us or not, the better they're going to be able to understand it and report it. So we do a lot of convening partnerships with the Financial Narrative, with Tech NYC and others to bring people together and to not just bring people together to meet, but to bring other leaders to the table. And then we have partners like, again, on the floor, someone like a Trilio. So we have a true partnership network on the business side, and we show up and we demo with them and show what we're doing for them, right? And not just that we partner with them. And so and we love to go, being our partners, because Zack, you were over at Complex Con, right? And we were ingrained with our partners' booths, and not just there as an entity. And I think that's how partnerships work for us. Again, it's part of that show, don't tell ethos, right?
That's great. And Amanda?
Yep, so we work a great deal with partners, and in our world, we talked about the financial institutions, their consumers and clients, but we also have fintech partners, we have third-party service providers that offer our services downstream. So if you think about financial institutions of all sizes, there's community banks and credit unions and regional banks that plug into our third-party service providers. So we work a great deal to partner with them so they understand the same stories to share and the success stories through different tactics. So we have our Payments Nerds podcast that really tells these stories and helps educate, and a lot of co-authored materials. And really it's just a matter of making sure that there's repetition in those key messages and learning, so everybody really understands and the same messages getting out from us to those partners, again, for that educational aspect, and so people really understand how the technology works, and that they hear the same thing from multiple places.
Can I just add one quick thing?
Yeah.
Repetition. I can't stress that enough. I fully agree. And that idea of horses for courses, you should be able to go to YouTube or to any channel and see 10 versions of the same thing just being communicated through different voices again. And I think I fully agree with what you're saying.
Just add that I think that's one of the things as practitioners we have to have our stakeholders understand, where they go down the stage. Well, I said this last time, but you said it to a different bunch of people, right? New audience, same message, right? I think repetition in that way is the same, right?
Fully agree. Yep, absolutely.
So very good point about the content, the distribution channels. You just brought up YouTube. How in this age of short attention spans, social media, how has the way that you create and distribute the content changed?
Oh my God, this is for me.
Yeah, this is yours.
Because I have a lot to say here. I've been at Block for 9 years. I was formerly on the Square side of the business, and we would plan and we would build out our campaigns, and we're speaking to small business owners. So again, complex kind of conversations, and we would have these incredibly beautiful campaigns and again curriculum and activations that would accompany that. And today at Cash App, I would say the stuff that I look at with the team and our data science team or our insights team is able to kind of point to, is the most lo-fi, non-polished content that is doing the best and the most. And so I think that just in the shifts in time of wanting to have a really high produced backdrop, stage, program, whatever it may be, it's just not that right now. And at least for us and the audiences that we're reaching, it's more about just always on and continuing to reshare that messaging, inspiring, motivating, educating you. And so right now, especially when you're leaning just on social channels, I would say do more lo-fi, invest your budgets in reaching more audiences through pushing paid behind that content than just even producing it.
Yeah, actually we were having a discussion backstage before we came on, and we were saying that selfies perform better on LinkedIn than like professional shots. So it's people want to see the realness. They don't want the super high production right now, which is interesting in that consumer narrative.
Especially in finance too. I think it's so important that like there's just more like just transparency and relatability when it doesn't feel like this is so far from me. I don't understand this is a really complex topic, or this isn't for me. And when you shift that perception and just be like, what we're talking about doesn't need to have all the fluff. Like we just need to get this really quickly, and those 30-second sound bites or lower is what's needed, while then having the high-low, right? Like we don't need to have like our brand moments and make sure that you're seeing something beautiful. But I think day to day, where I've been at blog for 9 years, was all really just well-planned and produced content. And now, last minute, something is coming in today from our social listening team. This is trending, and within the day, we are capturing something and hitting send.
That's great. Amanda, what about from a B2B perspective?
Yeah, we, in terms of the regular conversations, we really use our internal employees to tell the story as well. So I think we want to really align what internal messaging we share so that when representatives of the clearinghouse go out and have conversations in the industry, that they're sharing the same key messages and storylines that we are in our marketing materials, and we also make sure that they're very aware of the campaigns and assets that we've created in the market, so they can bring those to the attention of the people with whom they're speaking. So that's a really good channel for sort of authentic conversations and building trust and everything through those relationships. And then in terms of creating content and distribution, obviously everything's changing a lot, so we have to adapt. And so we're looking, both of course with traditional media, but then also beyond traditional media. So who are the credible voices in the industry that have the ears of those that we want to reach? And so really making sure they are aware of, the case studies and successes of, again, our products and services, so they too can emphasize and reinforce what we're telling the market. So it's, the influencers, there's obviously tons of podcasts that we all see here. And then really obviously making sure that the right message is created for the right audience, because it is a huge ecosystem, as we all know, so not everything is going to resonate with the same people in the way that you tell it, and then aligning the appropriate channel and how people consume information. So some people like bite-sized pieces, 8-second videos on social media. Others like longer form white papers, which maybe they do want to dig into the technical aspects, and then you can still chunk that out into smaller articles and other posts to create the interest and sort of take the headline pieces. But I think it's nice to have different assets that cater to different ways people learn and understand.
That's great. And Mike, you have internal and external examples of developing content differently, which I found fascinating.
So I just want to start from the concept though, which is, I've talked about want to make sure people care, but the other thing, I learned when I worked at Time Warner, I learned from the CEO at the time, John Martin, was CEO of Turner Broadcasting, and he came into my office one day and he said to me, Mike, who's our biggest competitor? So my first thought was Disney, Fox, right? It was one, and he said, no. Our biggest competitor is people's time and attention. Right? And he said, so if you get them, hold them and make it worth their while. So we start with that. Like, our biggest competitor is your time and your attention. And so what I tell my team is, don't create something that you're not interested in. Don't write an email, don't do a newsletter, don't create a video. If you wouldn't sit there and watch it yourself, why in the world do you think anyone else would care, right? So it's make sure that when you get their attention, you hold it and you make them feel that it's valuable and they'll want your attention again. So I think that's the ethos. I think the other thing that we also do is we have the benefit of, we talk a lot to our buying audiences, and our buying audiences aren't really infected, if you will, by the time, we can hold their attention, but we have to get their attention. So it's not as much as their attention is small, it's that their time is limited. So if we get them, they'll spend time with that content. But if we don't, we're gone. On the internal side, though, very similarly, we have 30,000 people, super busy, different types of jobs. So it's how do we hit them independently? How do we think about, the people who are doing call service in India versus the people who do sales in Los Angeles, right? Those are completely different audiences. So you can't assume that you're going to reach them all. So we do multi-channel, right? Like different. We think about, I love what you said. It's distribution, not just creation. And then we start to get creative too. Like how many different ways, Zach, like you were saying, with repetition. So even when we have like cocktail mixers, right, someone on our team came up with a great idea of let's do coasters with the QR codes to our newsroom and our podcast. And so, did it work? Yes, we saw a surge of people going to our cocktail events using the QR codes and going to our newsroom or going to our podcast. So you also have to get a little creative too, I think.
That's great. Yeah, and so thinking about the internal perspective, the team perspective, we've talked about the channels, we've talked about the types of content. How do you put together really world-class marketing and communications teams, especially in this age of AI? It's so critical. So, Amanda, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I mean, AI is interesting. We're definitely looking at it at the clearinghouse. We've got some pilots going and really working to see how best to use that. I think, when we think about building a team, it's really, for me, curious people. So over the course of my career, I've had a lot of teammates and people on my team that are former reporters and journalists. So asking the questions, really understand how to use different technology and how it can basically benefit your strategy and the things that you're doing. And then taking that information and really being flexible too. So I think it's not for the faint of heart in terms of the marketing communications professions. Like you have to pivot quickly, take new technology, learn, and then really have judgment too and understand sort of what works for you. Not all of the new things that are offered are actually appropriate for your team, and so having judgment on the team as well. And then it's good to have a balance of personalities in terms of a few that are really pushing for pushing the boundaries and thinking about like breaking the mold, and then balancing that with people that are sort of steady and consistent in terms of the execution. And you need to have that healthy debate on a team to decide how hard to push at certain times for something really cool, or no, actually that's not quite right for us, and maybe another time, and let's think of it some more thought. So I think diversity of thought and background perspectives, even including people from other industries. We're B2B obviously in our organization, but it's interesting always to me to see, I know Zack had worked in other industries before coming to financial services. So I think that should be something that, should be overlooked. So.
Can I add one?
Please.
A new thing that we've just shifted to is, all of our employees are also fans of the work that we do, right? And when we identify partnerships with very much a strategic, thought in mind of how can we flag out to the people that we're servicing. And so many of our employees would get assigned, this is more like on the creative side, would be assigned, this designer would be assigned to this project. And we started to then look at it a little bit differently, where we would share, okay, we have Formula One, we have Sabrina Carpenter, we have Timothy campaign. And there's like a 30% of our motivation that they'll just work harder on the work because they're just so excited to be a part of it. And so we would kind of start to open up a bit more of a dialogue with the producers, the creative directors, the copywriters, everyone would just say, these are the things that we're working on, and then the people who have a personal motive behind it were also just so much just closer to the work and really could see that through, I think, the finished product. I also think that just like with, employee engagement, like it wasn't as much of a focus when kind of thinking through some of our marketing campaigns, but now it is, and we definitely want to make sure that we are, like, the B2C side obviously is first and foremost, but the people who work for us, we want to make sure that they want to stay here, the retention, the excitement, them sharing on their own social channels is just as important. So being able to really include the employee and just thinking that when you're building out your campaigns does really have an impact.
Yeah, it goes to what Mike was saying. Don't create something you're not interested in. If you're not going to read it or watch it, nobody else is either. So.
Well, to Zach's point, one of the things that we do is on our team and how we design the team, and I've done this in other places, but we actually have a team that just looks at colleague experience. So it's not internal communications, it's not external communications, it's colleague experience, and they look through the lens of everything. So they look through how we're communicating or how we're recruiting, and they have a lens on everything that comes out from an internal standpoint of whether or not we're thinking about certain things like that would be important in what the colleague experience is, because internal communications is about leadership, it's about what's going on in the business, but it's also like how do you experience being a part of that company and what's the culture. And I think too many times it's off the side of someone else's desk, like, oh, we should think about maybe if they want this or that. So I think that's the way too, and I think it's more important. I think it's more important now more than ever, especially with what happened with COVID and everything. I think that internal communication became really critical to brand survival and brand evolution and just business success.
Yeah, so Mike, what about building the team? What do you think about when you're looking to build your marketing and communications team?
Well, I think we said very similar things. You want to look for people who have a diverse skill set. I think you want to look for people who are not just of the industry. I think you also want to look for people, at least I do, is that everything we do is based on data and analytics. So I think you have to have some people who understand it, appreciate it, and know how to use it and know what to do about it. So I think there are different skill sets, but what I often find myself in the position of building something. So when you're building something, you need people who are up for that task. Like you might have 5 jobs this year, but you'll only maybe have 3 jobs next year, but you have to be in and willing to sort of be part of the building process. So I don't know if that's a skill set as more as almost like a characteristic of someone when you meet them. And you can sort of get a sense of, I only like running a playbook. Well, then you probably don't want to work for me. Because we have a playbook, but it'll change in 3 months. So I think it's more like looking for characteristics, skill sets, and trying to get a nice blend of all of those.
That's great. So let's wrap it up by taking a page out of maybe your past notebooks or other people's notebooks. What are some lessons you guys have learned, either from observing others or from your own mistakes, that you'd like to pass on to the crowd today?
I go back to just the point that I think the biggest thing right now is like less polished, less like high production, and just real time content and creative campaigns. I would add to that just when we're all probably looking forward going through annual planning or thinking through things that you have to allow space for change. And to Michael's point, I'll just like, if you need to see a plan or a playbook that far in advance, that's just not how we're working today. You just have to be more nimble and agile and move. And I think, and which is, it's exciting, but it's a lot more stressful because it's a lot more in the moment. And so things that I can point to this year that I think are really great moments for Cash App, I would have not planned in this time last year. So just keeping that space open.
Yeah, we're seeing that across the board with our clients as well. Annual planning is kind of a laughable term at this point. Everything changes so quickly. It's like, okay, great, we'll have an idea of what we may want to talk about, but really we're going to do a 6-month plan at the most at this point. So
yeah, how we've changed our planning structure is really an operating model versus a plan, right? So then you come to us and say this is happening in 3 months, we'll figure out based on how we operate, how we're going to make that a success versus this is coming, how do we plan for it? And I think it's a change in mindset. And I would say the one thing I've learned constantly and continue to is just get out of your comfort zone, right? I know that sounds cliche, but like, you get to a certain point in your career, like, do I really want to, but you should, always, constantly. I hate events, hate them. But, like last night was like torture for me, but it was worth it, right? I'm constantly pushing myself to do stuff that I don't like, are not necessarily in my comfort zone.
I'm going to add on to that. So as you're pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, it's also like really make sure that you're protecting the brand. And so there's so many things that you can really consider. And so I think it's important too for leaders to sort of drive their own car and think about what is the mission and goal of the organization that you're in, and what are all the cool new things that you can do to that end. But at the same time, don't get lost in terms of what your organization is and the personality and what you're trying to achieve, because it's easy to get distracted with so many cool things that I think are out there right now, especially in our field. But it's also, there's sort of a single goal at the end of the day that you really need to stick to in terms of your objectives.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to test out new things and try things, but you also don't want to just create something for the sake of creating it because it's cool or flashy or a new channel if it's going to dilute the brand or distract the end audience in some way over time. Great. Any parting thoughts that you guys want to share that we talked about today or didn't get to cover?
I have one little thing, is that I'm really embracing the AI more behind the scenes from a marketing perspective than I anticipated. I think that, and just an example that I'm leveraging a lot right now in real time is, we work on a lot of partners, and so we need to vet those partners, and those processes take a very long time. And so the just being able to have a checkpoint with AI, being able to see, do we with this brand or this celebrity or this athlete, has been incredibly helpful. Just real time, making sure that we're like having checks and balances in place. So yeah, leveraging AI, I think has been
Great. Excellent. Well, thank you all for joining today. Very exciting to have you, and we appreciate it.